Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the universe changed forever. He sat in his command chair aboard the USS Liberty, watching stars drift past the main view screen. The ship was 3 months into a routine exploration mission. At the edge of human space, nothing exciting ever happened out here, which was exactly how Jake liked it. Then Lieutenant Amy Carter burst onto the bridge, her face pale with shock. She clutched a data pad in her trembling hands and nearly stumbled over her own feet, rushing toward him. "Captain, you need to see this right now," she said, her voice shaking. "We just received a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. It's marked as an emergency broadcast to all known species." Jake set down his coffee and took the data pad. The message was brief but terrifying. The Galactic Queen, Empress Valandra of the Cytherian Empire, was dying. Someone had poisoned her with a rare quantum toxin that attacked her royal bloodline. At the genetic level, without treatment, she would be dead within 7 days. The Queen was not just any ruler. She had kept peace between hundreds of alien species for over 50 years. Her empire spanned a quarter of the galaxy, and her death would trigger the largest succession war in galactic history. Billions would die as different factions fought for control. "There's more, sir," Amy said quietly. "The Council has identified the only cure. It's a flower that grows on a planet called Kepler-4 for 2b. The problem is where that planet is located." Jake pulled up the star charts and felt his stomach drop. Kepler-4 to be sat in the heart of the Void Nebula, a region of space that every spacefaring species avoided. Ships that entered the nebula simply vanished. No distress calls, no wreckage, nothing. The area was considered a galactic graveyard. Commander Rick Stone walked over from the tactical station, his jaw tight with concern. "Sir, the Council reports show they've already sent 3 rescue fleets. First had 2,000 ships from the Andromedan Federation. The second included 5,000 vessels from the Zorblad Empire. The third fleet was 10,000 ships representing 20 different species. Let me guess," Jake said grimly. "None of them came back. Not a single ship, Captain. The Council has officially declared the mission impossible. They're preparing for the Queen's death and the chaos that will follow." Jake stared at the star charts, his mind racing. The political situation was a nightmare waiting to happen. The Queen had no clear heir, and her empire was held together purely by her personal authority, without her ancient grudges between species, would explode into open warfare. Chief Engineer Lisa Park approached from the engine room, wiping grease from her hands. She had been listening to the conversation and wore a troubled expression. "Captain, I've been digging through our historical databases," she said. "I found something interesting about quantum poisoning. Humans dealt with similar toxins back on Earth during the early atomic age, developed theoretical treatments that other species never pursued because they didn't have our evolutionary exposure to quantum radiation." Amy's eyes widened. "Are you saying humans might actually be able to help?" Lisa nodded slowly. "Our ancestors survived nuclear weapons, quantum experiments, and radiation exposure that would kill most alien species. We have genetic resistances and medical knowledge that could be the key to saving the Queen." Jake felt the weight of impossible responsibility settling on his shoulders. His ship carried only 200 humans, making it one of the smallest vessels in space. They had no weapons capable of fighting entire fleets, no advanced technology that surpassed other species, and no military reputation to speak of. What they did have was something the galaxy had learned to respect, even if they didn't understand it. Humans were considered reckless by alien standards, willing to attempt things that more logical species would never consider. Some called it stupidity, others called it courage. Jake wasn't sure there was a difference. The communication system chimed with an incoming message. The face of Ambassador Zixtera appeared on the main screen, her crystalline features flickering with desperate hope. She represented the Galactic Council and had been coordinating the rescue attempts. "Captain Morrison," she said, her translated voice carrying exhaustion and fear. "I'm transmitting this message to all remaining vessels in the sector. The Queen's condition has worsened. We estimate she has perhaps 4 days remaining, possibly less." Jake could see other humans gathering on the bridge, drawn by the gravity of the situation. Dr. Helen Ross, our chief medical officer, stood beside communications officer Ben Turner. Pilot Kelly Adams had left her post to listen, while navigation officer Chris Wells pulled up detailed maps of the Void Nebula. The Galactic Council acknowledges that this mission exceeds reasonable risk parameters, the ambassador continued. We cannot order any species to attempt what 3 fleets have already failed to accomplish. However, if any vessel chooses to make this attempt, they will have our full support and eternal gratitude. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge. In heavy silence, Jake looked around at his crew, seeing the same mixture of fear and determination on every face. These were good people who had joined Starfleet to explore strange new worlds, not to fight cosmic horrors in nightmare regions of space. Sir, Rick said quietly, we have to consider the reality of this situation. If 3 massive fleets couldn't survive the Void Nebula, what chance does one exploration ship have? We'd be ordering our crew to certain death. Dr. Ross stepped forward, her medical training evident in her calm assessment. Rick's right about the risks, but we also have to consider what happens if we don't try. The Queen's death won't just start a war. It will destabilize the entire galactic political structure. Trade routes will collapse, peaceful species will be dragged into conflicts, and the death toll could reach the trillions. Tom Bradley, one of the junior engineers, spoke up from near the back of the group. His voice was steady despite his youth. Someone has to try, right? I mean, if everyone gives up, then she definitely dies and the war definitely happens. But if someone makes the attempt, there's at least a chance. Kelly Adams nodded in agreement. The other fleets were huge and obvious. Maybe that's why they failed. A single small ship might be able to slip through where massive formations couldn't. Jake found himself thinking about human history, about all the times his species had faced impossible odds, and somehow found a way through. Storming of beaches under enemy fire, the exploration of hostile continents, the first tentative steps into space when they barely understood the technology keeping them alive. Humans had always been the species that tried when others said it couldn't be done. Sometimes they failed spectacularly, but sometimes they succeeded in ways that changed everything. Lisa, he said finally, how confident are you about our ability to synthesize the antidote if we can get the flowers? The chief engineer considered. Carefully. Based on our historical data and current medical technology, I'd say we have a 70% chance of success. That's assuming we can get samples back to Dr. Ross alive. And what about our chances of actually reaching the planet and returning? Lisa's expression darkened. Unknown, Captain. No one who's entered the nebula has ever reported back with useful data. Jake stood up and walked to the main view screen, staring out at the distant stars. Somewhere among them, a dying queen held the fate of the galaxy in her failing hands. Behind him, his crew waited for a decision that would determine whether they lived to see another day or died as heroes in the darkest. Corner of space, the smart choice was obvious. Turn around, head back to Earth, and let someone else deal with the impossible mission. No one would blame them for refusing a suicide run that had already claimed 3 fleets. But as Jake looked at the reflection of his crew in the view screen, he knew they were all thinking the same thing. Humans didn't become heroes by taking the smart choice. They became heroes by taking the choice nobody else would make. All hands, he announced over the ship's communication system. This is the captain. Report to your stations. We're changing course for the Void Nebula. The USS Liberty approached the edge of the Void Nebula like a tiny fish swimming toward a massive storm cloud. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the swirling darkness grow larger on the main screen. The nebula stretched across hundreds of light years, its purple and black gases hiding secrets that had swallowed entire fleets. Captain, Communications Officer Ben Turner called from his station. I'm picking up something strange. There are scattered transmissions coming from inside the nebula. They're very weak and broken up, but they're definitely there. Jake moved to Ben's station and listened to the crackling static. Buried beneath the noise, he could hear fragments of voices speaking in different alien languages. Some sounded terrified, others angry, and a few carried the desperate tone of final messages. Those are distress calls, Dr. Helen Ross said quietly. She had joined the bridge crew to monitor the medical situation. Some of the lost ships are still transmitting. That means they survived the initial entry into the nebula. Rick Stone frowned as he studied the tactical readings. If ships survived going in, why didn't any of them come back out? What happened to them in there? Before anyone could answer, the Liberty crossed the nebula's outer boundary. The change was immediate and disturbing. The stars vanished as thick clouds of gas surrounded the ship. The normal hum of the engines became muffled, and strange lights flickered past the viewports like ghostly fireflies. "Navigation systems are going crazy," Chris Wells reported from his station. The young officer's voice carried a note of panic as he watched his instruments spin wildly. "I'm getting readings that say we're moving in 6 different directions at once. The computer can't figure out where we are or where we're going." Kelly Adams gripped her pilot controls tighter. "I'm switching to manual flight. The autopilot keeps trying to turn us toward something that doesn't show up on sensors. It's like the ship wants to go somewhere we can't see." The nebula seemed to have a life of its own. Gas currents pushed the ship in directions that defied physics, while mysterious energy fields made the hull creak and groan. Strange whispers echoed through the communication channels, speaking words and languages that sounded almost familiar but made no sense. Captain Amy Carter called from the science station, "I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the nebula. It's like someone scattered hundreds of invisible black holes in random patterns. One wrong move, and we could be crushed or torn apart."
Oh.
Jake nodded grimly. The nebula was definitely a trap, but it was a trap with survivors. The ongoing distress calls proved that some ships had found ways to stay alive inside this cosmic horror show. The question was how long they could last. "Lisa," he called to the engineering station, "how are our systems holding up?" Chief Engineer Lisa Park checked her readouts with growing concern. "Not good, Captain. The nebula is interfering with our power grid. I'm reading energy drains that shouldn't be possible. It's like something is feeding on our ship's power." If summoned by her words, the lights on the bridge suddenly dimmed. The air grew cold, and a strange humming sound filled the ship. Through the viewports, Jake could see shapes moving in the nebula around them. They looked like jellyfish made of pure energy, drifting through space with graceful, predatory movements. "What are those things?" Tom Bradley whispered from the engineering console. Dr. Ross moved to the sensor station and studied the readings. "I'm not sure they're alive in any way we understand," she said. "They seem to be made of organized energy patterns. They're definitely interested in us, though." Energy creatures began to surround the Liberty, their glowing forms pulsing. With increasing brightness, as they drew closer, more systems began to fail. The artificial gravity flickered, making everyone grab onto their stations for support. "They're feeding on our technology," Lisa realized with horror. "These things consume energy and metal. That's what happened to the other fleets. They were eaten by space jellyfish." Jake had seen enough. "Kelly, get us out of here. Full power to engines." The pilot's hands flew over her controls, but the Liberty barely responded. The energy creatures had drained too much power from the ship's systems. They were trapped in a slowly tightening circle of hungry predators. Captain Ben Turner called urgently. "I'm receiving a transmission. It's coming from deeper in the nebula, and it's in English." The voice that came through the speakers was weak, but determined. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Maria Santos of the exploration ship Endeavor. If you can hear this, do not engage the energy feeders. They grow stronger when you fight them. We learned that the hard way." Jake grabbed the microphone. "Captain Santos, this is Captain Morrison of the USS Liberty. We're here to rescue the Galactic Queen. Can you help us?" A bitter laugh came through the static. "The Queen. We've been trying to reach her for 3 weeks. Our ship crashed on the planet's surface, but the energy feeders won't let us get close. Every time we try, they drain our power and force us back." The energy creatures continued to circle the Liberty, their forms growing brighter as they fed. Jake could feel the ship's life support system struggling to maintain basic functions. They had minutes before complete system failure. "There's something else you need to know," Captain Santos continued. "The energy feeders aren't the worst thing in here. There's something deeper in the nebula, something that controls them." Lost contact with 12 ships that tried to investigate. They just stopped transmitting. Dr. Ross looked up from her medical scanner with a pale face. Captain, I'm detecting biological signs from inside those energy creatures. I think they're not just feeding on our technology. They're feeding on fear and terror as well. The more frightened we become, the stronger they get. Jake understood. Immediately, fear was making the situation worse. The energy creatures were drawn to both technology and emotion, creating a deadly combination that had trapped the rescue fleets. But humans had one advantage that other species might lack. Listen. Up, everyone, he announced to the bridge crew. These things feed on fear, so we're not going to give them any. I want everyone to think about something that makes them angry instead of scared. Think about the Queen dying while these monsters keep us from saving her. The change was immediate. As the crew's fear transformed into determination and anger, the energy creatures began to lose their brightness. They still surrounded the ship, but they no longer seemed to be draining power as quickly. It's working, Lisa reported, with amazement. Power levels are stabilizing. Whatever these things are, they don't like anger as much as they like fear. Kelly Adams managed to restart the main engines, and the Liberty began to move deeper into the nebula. The energy creatures followed but kept their distance, apparently unsure how to handle prey that refused to be terrified. Captain Santos, Jake called over the radio, we're moving toward the planet. Can you guide us past the worst hazards? I'll try, came the reply, but be warned. The closer you get to the planet, the stranger things become. Reality doesn't work the same way near Kepler 4b. We've seen ships age decades in minutes. Gravity that flows upward, and time that moves backward. As they flew deeper into the nightmare, Jake realized they were not just fighting for the Queen's life. They were fighting against cosmic forces that existed outside normal understanding. The Void Nebula was not just dangerous, it was wrong in ways that challenged the basic laws of physics. But humans had always been good at dealing with things that were wrong. They had a talent for finding solutions where others saw only problems, for pushing forward when logic demanded retreat. Liberty continued its journey toward the impossible planet, carrying the hopes of an entire galaxy into the heart of darkness itself. Kepler 442b appeared on the Liberty's view screen like a planet from a fever dream. The world spun slowly in the darkness of the nebula, its surface constantly shifting between different colors and patterns. One moment it looked like a normal, rocky planet, the next it seemed to be made of liquid metal or crystalline structures that defied explanation. Captain Amy Carter said from the science station, her voice filled with confusion. The planet's readings don't make sense. According to my instruments, it has 7 different types of gravity, 3 different atmospheric compositions, and the surface temperature varies from freezing to molten lava depending on which sensor I use. Jake. Morrison stared at the impossible world through the main view screen. Reality seemed to bend around the planet like light around a massive star. Space itself looked warped, creating strange visual effects that hurt to look at directly. There, Chris Wells called from navigation, pointing at a section of the planet's surface. I'm detecting wreckage from the Queen's ship. It looks like they managed to crash land in what appears to be a stable area, but I can't be sure anything stays stable on that world. Dr. Helen Ross moved to the sensor station and began scanning for life signs. I'm reading multiple biological signatures on the surface. Some are definitely from the Queen's Guard, but there are others, much larger signatures that don't match any known species in our database. Jake made the decision quickly. Kelly, take us into orbit. We're going down to the surface. Steve, prepare an away team. Take Julie and Matt with you. The rest of us will maintain position and monitor from up here. Captain Steve Walsh nodded and headed for the shuttle bay. He was the Liberty's best ground team leader, a man who had survived hostile environments on a dozen different worlds. With him went botanist Julie Green, who would need to identify and collect the quantum flowers, and security chief Matt Cooper, whose job was to keep everyone alive. As the shuttle descended toward the planet's surface, the crew aboard the Liberty watched with growing concern. The small craft seemed to flicker in and out of existence as it passed through the planet's atmosphere. Sometimes it appeared to be falling upward. Other times it looked like it was moving in slow motion. Shuttle to Liberty. Steve's voice crackled. Over the communication system, The descent is getting weird down here. Our instruments show we're landing, taking off and crashing all at the same time. I'm flying by instinct and hoping for the best. The shuttle finally touched down near the wreckage of the Queen's Royal Transport. The ship had been magnificent once, a golden vessel the size of a city block designed to carry the most important person in the galaxy.
Ow!
It lay broken and scattered, across a landscape that seemed to shift between desert, forest, and crystalline formations. "Away team to Liberty," Steve reported as his team stepped onto the alien surface. "The ground feels solid, but it looks different every time I turn my head. Julie, are you seeing this?" Julie Green knelt down and examined the soil with her scientific instruments. "The quantum flowers are definitely here," she said with excitement. "I can detect their energy signature, but they're not growing in normal soil. They seem to be rooted in something that exists between dimensions." As the away team moved toward the crashed ship, they encountered the first of the planet's guardians. The creature that emerged from the wreckage looked like a warrior from the Queen's personal guard, but something was terribly wrong. Its body flickered between solid matter and pure energy, and its eyes held an intelligence that was no longer entirely sane. "Who dares disturb the sacred ground?" the creature demanded in a voice that echoed from multiple dimensions. "Guardian of the royal blood. I have defended this place for an eternity of moments and a moment of eternity." Matt Cooper raised his weapon, but Steve gestured for him to lower it. The creature was clearly not entirely hostile, just confused by whatever force was affecting the planet. "We're here to help," Steve said carefully. "We've come to save the Queen. Where is she?" Kethmos pointed toward a section of the wreckage that seemed to exist in several different locations at once. "The Queen sleeps in the Chamber of Stars, but the Shadow Weavers guard her dreams. They feed on reality itself, reshaping existence. To match their hunger, if summoned by his words, the true horrors of the planet began to reveal themselves. Creatures that looked like living tears in space itself emerged from the twisted landscape. They moved by rewriting the laws of physics around them, turning solid ground into liquid, making gravity flow sideways, and causing time to skip like a broken recording. Reality weavers," Julie breathed, recognizing the creatures from ancient xenological texts. "They're beings that exist outside normal space-time. This entire planet must be some kind of prison designed to contain them." The reality weavers attacked without warning, reshaping the battlefield with every move. The ground beneath Matt's feet suddenly became quicksand, while the air around Julie turned solid as steel. Steve found himself running up a hill that was simultaneously a cliff face and a bottomless pit. Aboard the Liberty, Jake watched the chaos unfold with growing horror. "Can we beam them back up?" "The transporters can't get a lock," Lisa reported from engineering. "The planet's dimensional instability is scrambling our systems. The away team is on their own." On the surface, the situation grew more desperate. By the minute, the reality weavers were toying with the humans, reshaping matter and energy like children playing with clay. Steve's team should have been dead a dozen times over, but somehow they kept surviving encounters that should have been impossible. Captain Julie called over the communication system. "I think I understand what's happening. The reality weavers can reshape everything except us. Human consciousness seems to be naturally resistant to their reality manipulation. We stay ourselves even when everything around us changes." Steve realized she was right. While the creatures could turn rock into water and make gravity flow backward, they couldn't change the humans directly. The away team remained solid and consistent, even as reality went insane around them. This gave them an advantage, but it also revealed something terrifying. "Julie," Steve said grimly, "if these things can't affect human minds directly, why did they bother fighting us at all?" The answer came from an unexpected source. The Queen herself emerged from the wreckage, supported by two of her remaining guards. But she was no longer the majestic ruler who had kept peace across the galaxy. The quantum poison had changed her, making her a living beacon that called two things beyond normal space. "The poison was never meant to kill me," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that hurt to hear. "It was designed to make me into a doorway. Someone is using me to bring the reality weavers into normal space. When I die, the portal will open permanently, and these creatures will pour into the galaxy like a flood. Steve felt his blood turn cold. The mission had just become infinitely more complicated. They weren't just trying to save a dying queen. They were trying to prevent cosmic horrors from invading reality itself. "How long do we have?" he asked. The queen's form flickered between her normal appearance and something that existed in too many dimensions at once. "Hours, perhaps less." "The portal is already beginning to form. You can see it in the sky." Steve looked up and saw that she was right. A tear in space itself was slowly opening above the planet, revealing glimpses of the void between realities where the reality weavers came from. More creatures were already beginning to pour through, and each one made the tear larger. "Julie, we need those flowers now," Steve commanded. "Matt, help me get the queen to a safe position. We're running out of time to save the entire galaxy." Julie Green worked frantically to harvest the quantum flowers while reality twisted around her. The strange plants grew in patches where the dimensional barriers were thinnest, their crystalline petals glowing with energy that existed between worlds. Each flower she picked seemed to scream silently as it was removed from its impossible soil. "I've got enough for the antidote," she called to Steve Walsh, stuffing the last of the flowers into her protective container. "But Captain, these plants are connected to the reality weavers somehow. Taking them is making the creatures more aggressive." Steve could see what she meant. The reality weavers were becoming more solid, more focused in their attacks. Where before they had seemed to be playing with the humans, now they attacked with deadly purpose. The tear in space above them grew larger with each passing moment. "Team to Liberty," Steve called into his communicator. "We have the flowers. Request immediate beam-up." "Negative," came Lisa Park's voice from the ship. "Dimensional interference is getting worse. The reality weavers are jamming our transporters. I'll have to get back to the shuttle." The shuttle was only 100 meters away, but it might as well have been on another planet. Reality weavers surrounded the small craft and the space. Between the away team and their escape route kept changing. Sometimes it was empty air, sometimes solid rock, and sometimes it was filled with gravitational fields that would crush anyone who tried to cross Matt. Cooper fired his weapon at the nearest reality weaver, but the energy beam passed harmlessly. Through the creature's shifting form, "These things are impossible to fight," he said grimly. "How do you kill something that doesn't follow the laws of physics?" Queen Valandra, still supported by her loyal guards, raised her head with effort. The quantum poison was eating away at her royal bloodline, but it was also transforming her into something that existed partially in the reality weaver's dimension. "You cannot fight them with weapons," she said weakly. "They are part of the fundamental forces that existed before matter and energy. But there is another way. The poison that is killing me is also the key to containing them." Steve knelt beside the dying queen. "What do you mean?" "Quantum toxin creates a connection between dimensions," she explained, her voice growing fainter. "Whoever carries it becomes a living seal, able to hold the barriers between realities in place. The poison was designed to turn me into a portal, but it could also turn someone into a guardian." Dr. Helen Ross's voice crackled over the communicator. From the Liberty. "Captain, I've been analyzing the quantum flowers. The queen is right. The antidote won't just cure the poison, it will transfer it to whoever administers the treatment. That person would become the new dimensional anchor." Steve felt his stomach drop as he understood the implications. It could save the queen, but only by condemning someone else to take her place as a living barrier between dimensions. Whoever volunteered would be trapped forever, conscious but unable to return to normal existence. "There's more bad news," Dr. Ross continued. "The antidote has to be administered by direct contact. Someone has to inject it while touching the queen. The dimensional energy will transfer immediately." Jake Morrison's voice came over the communicator, filled with determination. "I'm coming down there. Prepare the antidote. I'll administer it myself." "No, sir," Steve replied immediately. "You're needed to command the ship. I'll do it." "Absolutely not," came Tom Bradley's voice from engineering. "I'm the youngest crew member. I have the least to lose. Other voices began joining the conversation as crew members. Throughout the Liberty volunteered for the impossible sacrifice. Dr. Ross, Lisa Park, Ben Turner, Kelly Adams, Chris Wells, and dozens of others all insisted they should be the one to take the Queen's place. Julie looked up from preparing the antidote, tears in her eyes. "This is what makes us human," she said quietly. "Any other species would be calculating who is most expendable. We're arguing over who gets to be the hero." The Queen listened to the human voices with amazement. In her 50 years of ruling the galaxy, she had never encountered a species where every individual was willing to sacrifice themselves for others. Most civilizations would have chosen the least important person and ordered them to accept their fate. "Wait," she said suddenly, her eyes brightening with a desperate idea. "There might be another way. The poison connects me to the Reality Weaver's dimension. But what if we could distribute that connection among multiple people? Spread the burden so that no single person has to carry it all." Dr. Ross's voice came through the communicator with growing excitement. "That could work. If we modified the ship's quantum core to create a distributed field, we could share the dimensional anchor effect among the entire crew. No one person would be completely trapped, but all of us would be partially connected to the barrier between realities." "What would that mean for us?" Jake asked from the bridge. "Unknown long-term effects," Dr. Ross admitted. "But you'd all survive, and you'd gain the ability to perceive and interact with dimensional threats. You'd become the galaxy's first line of defense against reality weavers and similar entities." The decision had to be made quickly. The tear in space above the planet was now large enough for reality weavers to pour through in significant numbers. Soon there would be too many to contain, even with a dimensional anchor in place. "All crew members," Jake announced over the ship's communication system, "report to your emergency stations. We're implementing the distributed anchor protocol. Everyone needs to be connected to the ship's quantum field when we activate it." On the planet's surface, Steve helped the Queen to her feet. "Your Majesty, are you willing to transfer the poison to all of us? It means we'll all be changed forever." Queen looked at the humans with deep respect. "Captain Walsh, your species continues to amaze me." Yes, I am willing. But you should know that this sacrifice will transform you into something new. You will no longer be entirely human, but you will become the guardians that the galaxy needs." Julie finished preparing the modified antidote, using equipment from both the shuttle and the Queen's crashed ship. The device would inject the quantum toxin neutralizer while simultaneously connecting to the Liberty's quantum core, distributing the dimensional anchor effect among all 200 crew members. "Liberty to away team," came Jake's voice. "Crew members are in position. Dr. Ross has synchronized the quantum field. We're ready when you are." Steve took the antidote injector from Julie, knowing that the moment he used it, everyone aboard the Liberty would be changed forever. They would no longer be simple explorers, but cosmic guardians, standing watch against threats that most species couldn't even comprehend. "On my mark," he said, placing the injector against the Queen's arm while maintaining contact with his communicator. 3, 2, 1, mark? The injection triggered immediately. Steve felt the quantum energy flow through him and into the communicator, traveling up to the Liberty and spreading through the ship's quantum field to every crew member. For a moment that lasted eternity, all 200 humans experienced existence from a dimensional perspective that no normal being could survive. Reality twisted around them, showing them the true structure of space and time. They saw the barriers between dimensions, the cosmic forces that held reality together, and the endless void where the reality weavers came from. The knowledge should have driven them insane. But human consciousness proved remarkably adaptable. When the transformation completed, the Queen was cured, but the humans were forever changed. They could still see normal reality, but they could also perceive the dimensional layers beneath it. They had become living bridges between worlds, able to guard against threats that existed outside normal space-time. The reality weavers, sensing the new dimensional anchor, began retreating back through the tear in space. Without the Queen as an uncontrolled portal, they could no longer maintain their invasion of normal reality. It worked. The Queen breathed, her strength already returning as the poison left her system. You saved not just me, but the entire galaxy. What you've done will be remembered for 1,000 generations. 6 months after the rescue of Queen Valandra, Jake Morrison stood in the grand throne room of the Galactic Palace. But he was no longer the same man who had commanded a simple exploration ship. The quantum transformation had changed him and his entire crew in ways that were still being discovered. His eyes now held flecks of silver that seemed to see beyond normal reality, and he could sense dimensional disturbances from light years away. The Queen herself had recovered completely from the quantum poisoning, but she had dedicated her remaining years on the throne to honoring the sacrifice made by the Liberty's crew. Today was the formal ceremony that would change everything for humanity and the galaxy itself. Citizens of the Galactic Empire, the Queen announced to the billions watching, across hundreds of worlds, we gather today to recognize a deed that saved not just one life, but all life as we know it. The crew of the USS Liberty risked everything to prevent our reality from being consumed by forces beyond imagination. Jake looked back at his crew, all 200 of them standing in perfect formation behind him. They wore new uniforms now, deep blue, with silver trim that seemed to shimmer between dimensions. Each crew member bore the same silver-flecked eyes that marked them as guardians of reality itself. They had volunteered to become something more than human to protect those who could never understand the threats they faced. Dr. Helen Ross had spent months studying their transformation, and the results were both fascinating and sobering. The crew could now perceive dimensional layers that existed beneath normal space-time. They could see reality weavers and similar entities long before these creatures became threats to normal beings. Most importantly, they could fight these cosmic horrors using abilities that no other species possessed. Today, the Queen continued, I established the Order of the Quantum Guard. These brave humans will serve as our first and only defense against threats that exist outside the boundaries of our reality. They have given up their normal lives to become eternal guardians of the galaxy. The ceremony was broadcast to every inhabited world in the known galaxy. Species that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence all watched with respect and awe as the Liberty crew accepted their new role. Earth, once considered a minor backwater planet, suddenly found itself elevated to a position of unprecedented importance in galactic politics. Ambassador Zixthera, the crystalline being who had first brought news of the Queen's poisoning, approached the podium. Captain Morrison, she said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I present you with the rank of Quantum Commander. You and your crew are hereby granted authority to act against dimensional threats wherever they may appear. Jake accepted the ceremonial badge, feeling its weight both physically and symbolically. The simple piece of metal represented responsibility for protecting billions of beings from horrors they would never see coming. It was a burden that would last for the rest of his extended life, as the quantum transformation had slowed their aging process dramatically. We accept this responsibility, Jake replied, his voice carrying to every corner of the galaxy through the broadcast. We swear to stand guard against the darkness between worlds, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, and to ensure that reality itself remains safe from those who would unmake it. The weeks following the ceremony brought a new type of mission for the Liberty and her crew. They were no longer explorers mapping unknown space, but cosmic police responding to dimensional emergencies across the galaxy. Their first major assignment came when sensors detected reality weaver activity near the Centauri colonies. Chief Engineer Lisa Park had modified the Liberty's engines to travel through dimensional layers, allowing them to reach trouble spots faster than any normal ship. When they arrived at Centauri, they found a situation that would have baffled any other rescue team. A research station studying quantum mechanics had accidentally torn a small hole in reality, allowing 3 reality weavers to enter normal space. The creatures had trapped the entire station in a bubble of twisted physics, where time moved backward. Gravity flowed in circles and solid matter behaved like gas. Standard rescue procedures won't work here, reported Amy Carter from the science station. The station exists in 7 different dimensional states at once. Normal transporters can't get a lock on anything. But the Liberty crew was no longer normal. Jake led a team through the dimensional tear using abilities they were still learning to control. They could walk through the twisted reality around the station without being affected, remaining solid and consistent while everything else changed according to the reality weavers' whims. The rescue took 12 hours of careful work, but they successfully evacuated all 300 researchers and contained the reality weavers back in their proper dimension. The grateful Centauri government offered the crew wealth and honors, but the humans politely declined. They had already received the only payment that mattered: the knowledge that innocent people were safe. News of the successful rescue spread quickly through galactic communication networks. Other species began to understand that humanity had become something unique in the galaxy, a race capable of dealing with threats that existed beyond normal comprehension. Requests for help began arriving daily from worlds experiencing strange phenomena that defied scientific explanation. The crew of the Liberty found themselves fighting entities that were made of living mathematics, creatures that existed as wholes in space-time, and beings that fed on the concept of existence itself. Each mission was different, each threat more bizarre than the last. But the humans adapted with the flexibility that had always defined their species. Tom Bradley, now the Liberty's chief dimensional engineer, developed new technologies that allowed them to detect and combat cosmic horrors more effectively. Kelly Adams learned to pilot the ship through spaces that didn't technically exist, while Chris Wells became expert at navigating between different layers of reality. Dr. Ross established medical protocols for treating people who had been exposed two-dimensional distortions. And Ben Turner created communication systems that could function even when reality itself was being rewritten. Every crew member found new purposes that used their transformed abilities to protect the galaxy. Years passed, and the Liberty crew became legends throughout known space. Children on 1,000 worlds grew up hearing stories of the humans who walked between dimensions to keep them safe. The crew aged slowly due to their quantum transformation, giving them decades to perfect their skills as cosmic guardians. Jake often stood on the bridge during quiet moments, looking out at stars that now appeared different to his enhanced vision. He could see the dimensional layers beneath normal space, the cosmic framework that held reality together, and the dark spaces where threats to existence lurked. "Any regrets, Captain?" Rick Stone asked one day. He had become the Liberty's expert on dimensional warfare, able to fight enemies that existed in multiple realities at once. Jake considered the question carefully. They had given up normal human lives to become something that existed partially outside reality. They could never truly retire, never return to simple exploration, never experience the basic pleasures that other humans took for granted. "None," he said finally. "We've saved more lives than we could ever count. We've prevented cosmic horrors from destroying everything we care about. And we've proven that humans belong among the stars, not as conquerors or explorers, but as guardians." Queen's final words to them echoed in his memory. She had said that other species called humans reckless, but she had learned that human daring was not the absence of fear, but the presence of love for those they protected. The crew of the USS Liberty had become the galaxy's shield against the impossible, the sword that cut through cosmic darkness, and the light that guided reality safely through dangers that most beings would never know existed. They were no longer simply human, but they had become everything that humanity aspired to be: protectors of the innocent, guardians of the helpless, and heroes who asked for nothing in return except the knowledge that the galaxy was safe. Their watch would continue for generations, an eternal vigil against the dark spaces between worlds, ensuring that love and hope could flourish under stars that remained safely in their proper dimensions.